today we have Larry Pihl, who has championed the Get Out the Vote efforts for many years, since 2011. And I'm going to just turn it over to him. And then afterwards, we're going to have a question and answer session. And afterwards, you have an opportunity to go to the table and get some information that he's going to provide. So without further ado, welcome Larry Pihl.
Can you hear me? Yes, I can. I can hear myself anyway.
It's too loud.
It's too loud? Gracias. Thank you, Melody. Still too loud? I've got to use my quiet voice. A little bit? A little bit? Oh, okay. Out here? How about there? Okay. Thank you. Well, welcome everyone. And it's still a little too loud. Okay. I hope you had great holidays, and we're in for a good New Year's. I'm counting on it with all your help. Great to see so many of you here. I was going to put this a little later, but I'll ask now because with the introductions I got the sense that it's not just U.S. people here supporting this discussion. So I'm kind of curious, a show of hands, how many people are U.S. citizens here? Just raise your hand. Okay, good chunk. How many people are not U.S. citizens but are here as supportive? Thank you. Thank you for coming, by the way. I'll talk about you a little bit in the future because we have a job for you too. Anyway. I grew up in New England. I'm a Bostonian, sort of. I sometimes have a funny accent, but I've been here since 2010. I'm an electrical engineer by background. I have a business degree and have my own business. My passion is to support the environment, which I think is probably one of the major things. It's a major thing facing us as human beings on this planet. But full disclosure, I am fully involved in supporting democracy and the rule of law. And I'm going to try to make this nonpartisan. It's sometimes difficult, but I will not mention the R or D words. I'd kindly like, you can ask questions after, but realize I will not get into the weeds on political issues today. I'm happy to do it after, somewhere else. We'll have a beer, whatever, and we'll go from there. But my job is to assist U.S. citizens living here in Lake Chapala to receive their ballots, register and receive their ballots, all U.S. citizens. Doesn't matter what your political persuasion is. I've often thought it was sort of like herding cats while being chased by a pack of dogs, but we can get it done together, I think. So why do we live in Mexico? Why do we want to vote living in Mexico? Some people have actually said, well, I'm in Mexico, so I don't have to worry about it anymore. I don't think you ever get away from what the United States is going to do. I think most of us end up having financial issues, interests in the U.S. U.S. citizens are subject to U.S. taxes, Medicare, Social Security benefits. Some have property there. Your family may be there. So you don't really get away from the United States by moving to another country. I also believe that many of us want to continue the American dream. Many of us that are here got a chance to live it, and we're here because of it. But I'd like to extend that opportunity to the rest of my fellow U.S. citizens, wherever they are. I think many of us would like to avoid cuts in programs that affect us even while we're living here, like Social Security and Medicare Advantage issues. I want to respect other people's rights. Yes, U.S. citizens, but other people's rights worldwide. And, you know, it's interesting. I think the old adage about what happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas. What happens in the United States does not stay in the United States. And you could look at it, if we had a major recession, hypothetically, I don't think we're going to have one. But if we had one, it'd be a loss here even to the Mexican community. The remittances that they get from their family and friends that are sending money down to support some people here, that would dry up. So we have an obligation not only to ourselves, but to the world community. I want to support democracy. I want to make sure it's free of fraud and has peaceful transitions between administrations. And I think we all would probably want to have us elect the best people that are knowing, they know how to get things done, and are generally working for most of our interests. I mean, not every politician will work for everything that you believe in, but in the majority of it, you want them to be doing things that are going to support your values. It's important, I think, for us all to realize that U.S. elections aren't just every 2 or 4 years. They're a continuum. They always have been, by the way. There's always been powers out there that are planning for the next election. And if you put your head in the sands and don't pay attention to what's going on and you don't read appropriate information and educate yourself, you won't be prepared to make the decisions that are going to affect you as a person and your family as going forward. So I think from now on, I think we all have to get out of the habit of thinking, oh, the election's over, I go back to life. Well, yeah, go back to life, but there's the next election, and there's people out there day one after the election that are working to maybe do things that aren't in your best interest. So a little bit of history lesson. Most of you, and maybe some of the folks that aren't from the U.S., this will help too, but most of you probably know that in 1776, white males who had property were allowed to vote. That's it. It took till 1840 when by the time that rolled around, most U.S. males could vote. 1870, African-American men could vote with the 15th Amendment. You see how it creeps up. It's a slow growing process. In 1872, Susan B. Anthony, she was fighting for women's rights to vote. She voted while being a woman, and she was arrested. She went to trial, and they gagged her so that she couldn't speak. She couldn't speak at her own trial. It took until 1919 for women to get the right to vote in the United States. You're welcome. I didn't do anything about it, but I'm glad. Black women in the United States actually didn't get full voting rights until 1965. That was with the Voting Rights Act that President Lyndon Johnson passed. So it's been a long fight, and it's still a fight. There's still powers out there trying to figure out how maybe some of you won't be allowed to vote if they have their choice. So let me talk about a few reasons. I realized just telling you how to get your ballot here was going to take about 10 minutes at most. So I'm going to add a little bit to some things that have affected the voting in the United States. And there are 4 different things that I think are kind of important. One is gerrymandering. I love this one a little bit because I'm from Massachusetts originally, and the governor in 1812, he also became vice president, was a fellow by the name of Eldridge Gerry. He decided that he could help restructure one of the voting districts north of Boston. So he added the towns together, and they ended up looking like a medieval salamander. And since his name was Jerry, they called it gerrymandering. And that's how the name started, and it went on from then. So it's still being done by different parties at different times. It's not a healthy way of doing it, but it's there. And so it's up to us to pay attention to make sure it doesn't happen. And there are laws to try to structure our districts. The other one I think was a big problem is Citizens United. In 2010, the Supreme Court decided that corporations ought to have the right First Amendment rights, which is the right for free speech. So they were given the right free speech, and they considered money to be partly free speech. you can see a problem coming there, right? They probably can put an unlimited amount of money into the election campaigns across the United States. Most of it is not very well documented, and are they working in your best interest? You have to decide, but it's certainly where it's not being disclosed, it makes it hard to know. Another thing that happened, back in 1949, there was a doctrine put in place by, I think it was President Truman. It was called the Fairness Doctrine. It said that all public communications, the television networks, newspapers, had to give equal airtime to at least both sides of an argument. And that went along pretty well until we got to be in 1987. The then president decided it wasn't in the best interest to have it, because there were all these cable networks and we didn't want to regulate them either, so it was eliminated. It all started back even earlier with a thing called yellow journalism that William Randolph Hearst probably developed back in the 1890s. Back then, he hired top cartoonists and writers and basically put out newspapers that really weren't news. They were set up to entertain. There was a lot of stuff on celebrities and sensationalism. And it wasn't until the Second World War, really, that the American public said, hey, we got to know what's going on. We're sending our men over to Europe to fight, and we're not getting real news. So that's when you got the Huntley Brinkleys and the like of those fellows that came on board, and women, to present a more balanced news. And then with the 49 edict for balanced fairness, it continued until 87. So right now, for example, the three major networks, not governed under, not having to worry about licensing anymore because they don't have to do balanced news, they took the news departments and pushed them into their entertainment divisions. Every one of them, all of the ABC, NBC, and CBS, they're all owned by entertainment divisions. Their job isn't really to give you news. You might get some news, but that's not the primary job. News wasn't profitable, entertainment is. For example, the ABC is owned by the Walt Disney Corporation, as an example. Okay. I think social media is another major problem for having fair elections. I believe it's, because it's pretty unregulated, it's a national security risk, both from internal sources and foreign sources for propaganda. So there's computer algorithms, those that are technical probably know conceptually. They write programs basically that look at what you look at, and then they decide, oh, we're going to feed you more of that stuff, and they end up burying you into things that really direct you down a rabbit hole in one direction. And it's hard to get out of that rabbit hole, and it's hard to get fair information. Those that watch the news solely on social media aren't really getting the full story of what's going on in the world around them. So the final one I have, I guess I didn't tell the truth of it, there's 5. The final one is the Electoral College. A lot of people aren't very happy with the concept of the Electoral College. Maybe a little history first. The Electoral College is not in the Constitution. It, back in 1797, I think it was, they were trying to decide, this is after Washington finished his presidency and decided 2 terms was enough and set the standard. Some folks got together, the Congress got together and said, we're going to either, there was 2 groups. One wanted to say, well, let's Congress figure out how to elect the president from now on. And another group said, no, we should let the people decide. So they couldn't decide. They came up with a compromise. It was kind of hastily put together, and that was called the Electoral College. For good or bad, it's worked sort of well enough, although in my lifetime I know there's at least 2 elections where the popular vote, the person that ran and won the popular vote, did not get elected president. So there's some glitches there that need to be fixed, I believe, in my opinion. There is some hope. I don't know how many people have heard of the National Popular Vote Compact. Anybody heard of that? A few of you had. There is a National Popular Vote Compact that's going around state to state for the state legislatures to enact in each state. What it says is that, well, you probably know that there's 538 electors. That's because there's 538 congresspeople and senators. So every state has a certain number of electors depending on how many congresspeople and senators they have. If you get 270, that's the magic number where that says you won the presidency. So many states have gotten together already and signed this compact, turned it into their state law that says if the popular vote in the United States goes one way, we will give all of our electors to that particular candidate. So that means you have to get 270 states worth of electors that have decided they will be in that compact. Right now, we're actually at 205. We've made some really good progress. The fact that most of you hadn't heard of it is an interesting issue because you need to let your Congress, your state Congress, know that you'd like to be in on it. For example, if you're from Alaska, Maine, Michigan, North Carolina, can't even read my own writing, South Carolina and Nevada, those states right now have bills in their legislature. You should, if you think that the Electoral College needs to be fixed, I'd contact your legislature and encourage them to support that in your state. It probably won't happen this November coming, but within the next few years, we could basically make the Electoral College ineffective. So, by the way, are there any dual nationals here? People that have both US and maybe Mexico? Okay. You guys are truly the most lucky in the audience. You get to vote in both countries. It's a responsibility, I know, but you can handle it, I'm sure. If you got to be a dual national, you can handle it. So it's easy to vote when you're outside of the United States. How many people, show of hands, have voted while living in Mexico? It's pretty good. I'd say maybe 2/3. Okay. There's two ways you could have gotten your ballot. The traditional way, and many folks maybe are still doing it this way, is they contact the Secretary of State, say, hey, they either say they're living overseas, but usually they say, I'd like to get an absentee ballot. And if everything works, they get their absentee ballot sent to their son's address in whatever state or something of that sort. And as long as everything works well, it's fine. The second way, though, is a little more interesting. All 50 states and the district and territories have signed up to something called UOCAVA, which stands for Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act. Who can repeat? It's UOCAVA, we call it the MOVE Act because it's a little simpler to remember. It's run by the U.S. military, it's administered by the U.S. military. Obviously, you want to make, it's pretty easy to say all U.S. soldiers should have a right to vote, but all U.S. citizens have a right to vote. Everyone in this room that's a U.S. citizen has a right to vote. You just have to be a citizen, live abroad, and be 18 by election day. Is there anybody that isn't 18 by election day? Sadly, we'd like to see more young people. You guys, I know, you're Mexicans, I know. There's an advantage over the Secretary of State approach in that when you fill out this by the way is called the Federal Postcard Application. It looks like a postcard, right? Yeah. It actually is very easy to fill out on the computer. It's a 10-minute job. We call it the FPCA. If you fill out the FPCA and submit it, it gives you an and every state accepts it, it gives you an automatic insurance policy. If you don't get your ballot for whatever reason, there's a federal backup ballot. It looks a lot like this, but it allows you to vote for all the federal offices. So you're going to get to vote no matter what. If your son moves away, if the election official decides they forgot your name, if it gets sent by mail, which has happened a lot, instead of the way you asked to have it come by email. Any number of things can happen, and when you're dealing with critical election times, you don't want that to happen to you. I can't tell you how many people have been frustrated and come and sing me 3 days before the election, what do I do now? You know, if you happen to be able to get your ballot in that time frame, you're going to be good friends with Federal Express at $75. So, on this form, the key thing on here is going to be the address where you're voting. That address is not your grandson's address. It's not your former next door neighbor's address in whatever state you came from. It's not a post office box or something that you found in our neighboring state that many of us get our mail through. It's where you voted and lived last, created residency last. That's your address, voting address. It doesn't change if they put a Walmart on that, or if it gets flooded by, heaven forbid, we get some of the lakes in California to rise, and if it gets flooded, it doesn't matter. That's still your address. It doesn't change for the rest of your life. So I want to introduce, is Emily Perry here somewhere? Emily Perry we're lucky to have her living in this town. She's also our national co-chair for Get Out the Vote. And we use a program called votefromabroad.org. We will help any U.S. citizen register and request their ballot. Doesn't matter what your political affiliation is. If you fill out this federal postcard application, and we'll tell you how to do that in a minute, we'll make sure you get your ballot. And I rely on Emily for answering a lot of my questions, even though I've been in since 2011. I think you've been doing it for at least 2010, I know. So, yeah. So, what's your voting experience like? Well, make it simple. You fill out this form, predominantly, or preferably, in the first couple weeks of January. Why wait until October so that you have to then scramble and maybe don't make it? You do it in January, you'll be able to vote in primaries that come along, which, by the way, primaries, I think, are one of the most important parts of our electoral system that get ignored. Only 20% of U.S. voters vote in primaries. Wow. If you vote, you have an outsized influence on who's going to become the candidate. If you don't have a good candidate, what do you have? So I strongly encourage you to get involved early, vote in your primaries. And you'll get a chance to vote. I mean, should there be heaven forbid, somebody dies in office, or maybe someone gets kicked out or whatever, then there'll be some special elections. You'll be prepared to get it. When you fill out this form, you will get your ballot 45 days before the election. That's plenty of time, by email. So it's by far the preferred way to go. So after you fill this thing out and email it in, a day or two later you call your election official. Hey, did you get it okay? Everything fine? You're happy? I love you. Thanks for all the work you do. And if everything's fine with them, you just sit back and drink margaritas and wait until 45 days before and vote. Well, study it, who you want to vote for, of course. I hear a lot of people saying, hey, my vote won't make a difference. Probably won't even be counted. Have anybody heard anybody say that? Yeah. It's a great way to get people not to vote. And it's not true. Your votes, there's always somebody that does something illegal, but the vast majority of votes have to be counted. The secretaries of state in your home state cannot certify the election until every ballot's been counted. It may be the last set of ballots counted, and often is. Some states do it early, but many of them leave it to the end, and then people say, oh, look, I'm winning, but wait a minute, the foreign overseas vote didn't come in. So it does get counted. the main reason people's votes don't get counted, they wait until October to do their response and get things in, and they miss deadlines, and they don't register when you fill out this form. You're basically re-registering. They don't do it within the time frame that the state says you're supposed to do it. So I know for a fact that at least 2 races I'm familiar with, John Testa from Montana and Al Franklin from Minnesota, I think. They both won because of the overseas vote. And more recently, anybody here from the state of Georgia? Yeah. Hey, great state of Georgia. Well, 2 senators right now in Georgia, they were elected because of the overseas vote. And I happen to know there's a president that was elected at that point in time, and he won because of the overseas vote. So we made a difference. The other thing I've heard people say, why bother? My state, the vote doesn't count in my state. I'm not in a swing state. Anybody heard that one? Yeah. Well, we hopefully can change that with the, if we can change the electoral college situation. But voting from your state, there's still the state senators, there's sheriffs, there's school boards, there's the dog catcher. There's all those things that need to be determined. And an awful lot of stuff gets done at the state level. Yes, we have federal elections, but an awful lot of things that you're paying attention to on the news now happen at the state level. If you don't have good people at the state level, your needs or your desires aren't getting addressed. So, and also, if you're a state representative, or you're a senator or a state representative, you'd like to know that I have X number of people over 65, nobody's over 65, over 65 that voted in my district. You're there, they're his constituents. And then you're likely to get more attention. So don't be putting it off just because it says your vote doesn't count. It really does matter, and you can make a difference. A cautionary story, there are states that have been trying to purge voters. You've probably heard some of them. There's one state that I recall was looking at names and doing computed matches on names. You know, John Smith, oh, here's a John C. Smith. He must, and that John Smith died. That must be a dead voter. Lots of people have been taken off the rolls with that kind of game. There's also another neighboring state here. I tried to get a retired attorney here, his ballot, after the first time I got it from fine. The second time, they wouldn't send him a ballot. They said, you're no longer on the voting rolls. What they've done is they send a letter to his address that he doesn't live at anymore. It's a nice trick. And it bounces. So, oh, take him off the rolls. Well, then it's harder to get back on the rolls. It took me probably at least 8 or 10 phone calls and a couple letters to get him back on the roll. He finally did a vote in the last election. But that stuff can happen, and you may need help. And we're here to help you on that if that happens. So don't. Yeah. So why do I vote? I believe in democracy and the rule of law. And I want to learn about the issues. By voting, I think I have to pay attention to what's going on. Because I don't want to just vote for somebody because they happen to have my last name. What's the odds of another Pihl running for it? Anyway. So I want to know what's going on and what things affect me. I want to also feel that I can help others who deserve the privileges that I had. You know, I grew up in a country and it treated me well, and I did fairly well in my life, and I want to be able to extend that to other people. I also celebrated the first birthday of my granddaughter a week ago, and I don't want her to grow up in an environment where there's school shootings she has to worry about, and worry about what books she can read, and what kind of health care she'll get as she grows up. So I want to make the difference for her. If anybody in this audience would like to help us in this helping get out the vote, we would be happy. As Dee Dee Cam High is sitting up in the front row, If at the end you want to step up and get involved, see Dee Dee. We have lots of good things you can do and help out and feel that even if you're in one of the states that you feel your vote isn't quite as important as a swing state, there's things you can do. And so we look forward to your help. Finally, let's review. All U.S. citizens are encouraged to fill out this form by the 15th of January. Yeah, if you wait till the 16th, it's okay. But it's a 10-minute job, really. And if you come here, by the way, we're going to be here tomorrow. Same place, 10 to 1. If you can't do it yourself, and we'll have this paper over there to tell you the website to go on, try to do it yourself. If you can't have any problems, come here tomorrow. We'll be here, and we'll get you registered and your ballot request in, and it'll be done in short order. We're going to be here a total of 29 or more Mondays throughout the year. There's a set of volunteers already in the 30 or 40 people that are here to participate and help this happen. So make it easy on us and let's get it over with early, because it's nothing more anxiety-ridden than the last couple weeks when we have crowds and backup and people are frustrated. You don't need to be that way. Get it done now. If you want to go with us, that's wonderful. There's also other ways you can do it. You can go to the federal site, which is the Federal Voter Assistance Program, fvap.gov. There's actually an organization in Guadalajara, the American Benevolent Society, that holds occasional voter registration. The Democrats abroad obviously do it. Again, this votefromabroad.org is for all U.S. citizens. Will support anybody that comes and wants to vote. We'll help you get it done. The Guad Reporter, and I know there's a representative of the Guad Reporter here. Thank you. It's been very good at supporting the activity, and they will be putting ads in the Guad Reporter to let you know what dates we're here. We're not here every Monday. There's a few special things that'll go on too. So pay attention to that. January is International Voter Registration Month. So that's why we'd like to encourage you to get it done sooner than later. There are primaries coming up. I'll toot my own horn a little bit. Sorry, Mike. His name's Mike. On Tuesday last, I filled one of these forms out and sent it to my home state, New Hampshire. And on Wednesday, I got my ballot. By Wednesday afternoon, it was in the mail to New Hampshire. They have the earliest primary. So, but there are primaries going on all through the year. There's a lot going on between now and Super Tuesday. If you're in March, California, Illinois, North Carolina, Texas, Ohio, and many others are having their primaries. Don't miss the opportunity. Get set up now so you get your ballot on time. So finally, I was reading about New Year's resolutions. Any guess what percentage of New Year's resolutions are actually kept? Yeah, it's 9, I think, 9. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to be 100% here. Fill out this darn form, and then make a promise that you're going to do it. Fill it out in a timely manner, and you'll be way above that 9%, and maybe you can move it up a little bit. So with that, I'd like to read a comment from James Baldwin. He said, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Larry. We're going to open up for questions. Larry, just, yeah. And I will,
you can direct it, yeah.
I'll direct that, and I'll come around with the mic. So please don't try to talk without the mic, okay? You were first.
Yes. I'm happy to say I'm from the state of California. Do they need my vote? I don't think so. Anyway, Larry, I would like you, pardon my ignorance, to elaborate on the Electoral College. How are they elected, the representatives in the Electoral College?
Okay.
on what is their persuasions, why, and how?
Okay, that's a good question. I think every state, this is my guess, I don't know the exact details, but it's up to each state to elect members of the Electoral College. I suspect they're done within the legislature, and they're done for both, well, they're done for both parties, if you want to talk about the two major parties. They're on hand depending which way the election goes, but they're selected within the state and certified by the legislature and the governor. So again, I don't know the detail in every state. It's something you could look up and see what happens in California, how it's done. You'd like more elaboration on the Electoral College, I think, is that the other question?
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, what is their persuasion if they're elected by the election?
Well, they're both. If you're California, like hypothetically, there'll be 25, I don't know what the number is for California. It's probably a big number because it's a big state. But say there's 25 electoral college votes, there'll be 25 Democrats, 25 Republicans. Oh wait, wasn't going to say the DNR words. 25 Green Party people. You know, they're selected. They're on a list, and they have persuasions of that particular party. So when they're told to go and vote, they vote along usually along party lines. So that's how it tends to work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Stand up, please.
Oh, nobody wants to see me.
Okay.
My question is, if you filled out this form before, should you fill it out again this January?
Good question. Many states will actually follow and continue to keep you on the rolls without you filling out the form. Usually they will do that. There's no guarantees, by the way. So the answer is yes, you need to fill it out every year, and the good news is, at least in our database, we keep the information you put in, except for some of the confidential stuff you put down, social security numbers and stuff like that, but we keep your address, your voting address for you. It's pretty easy to do. You should do it every year because your electoral official that you know personally really well, she may retire or he may retire, and you know Jimmy Jones or Sally Smith doesn't know you from Adam, and they just put it in the mail to you. Well, good luck you getting it in a timely manner if it goes in the mail. So everybody should ask, by the way, check the box. You want to get it emailed to you, and if you have a problem with email, we can talk about that too. But I should say over the side there, Terry is waving his hand. Terry and Janet, they have a form. If you're interested in coming tomorrow or any Monday in the near future, he has a form and a sheet to how you can go fill out, do it yourself. And if you come here, the form has all the questions you're going to be asked when you go on this, when you go to fill out this form. So you can have it all ready for ahead of time before you go on the computer. And if you come here with the form, you'll be in and out in no time flat. So.
Very good. We're right back here.
Hello everyone, my name is Frank Watson and I'm a Brit, and I'm 88 years old, so the Second World War started when I was 4 and I grew up in London, so I have sort of a first-hand feeling of what goes on when an autocrat takes power. So why am I telling you this? Well, I have developed a sensitivity to politicians to start to show autocratic tendencies. And so my question is the American electorate aware of the history of autocrats?
It's a good question. I can't comment on the political side. I will say that the average American electorate is probably not as politically educated as they could be, to say it. An understatement.
I'll go a little further and say, well, it appears that President Biden and me are both worried about this situation. And then the other day I learned of interest that American PBS is running a program on January the 23rd called Nazi Town, USA. I encourage people to watch it. I haven't seen it, but I will be watching. There's a trailer that you can pick up on the PBS website, and it gives you just a feeling for what it's about. It's frankly scary. I mean, just imagine, there was an organization formed in 1936, that's before the war, in which a group got together called the German-American Bund. Watch it.
Thanks, Frank. I'm aware of all of this, and I think it's, this forum I've been asked not to get too political, but those are the kind of things that you as a U.S. citizen need to be aware of. And I'm not saying either side, but however you want your country to be, and the world be, it's up to every one of us to be involved in this, so.
You got a question over here.
Hello, I appreciate your analysis. My degrees are in journalism, but I spent my life in business. So I'm very attuned to the business implications of journalism. And the one point that I saw that you didn't hit on, which most people, when you think about it, you'll recognize it. When the electorate started to be less educated, that is very coordinate with the rise of one particular cable network owned by a former Australian. And if you want to know how they did that from a business perspective, about 20 years ago, that business group bought the rights to broadcast football games from NBC. And once they did that, we don't, as Americans, have to discuss the importance of football to a lot of people. And what they did is they got the rights to all the football games. And then they started putting TVs in all of the bus stations, train stations, and pubs. And they show all the football games. And then when the football game goes off, so-called politics and news goes on. Of course, it's not politics or news. It's propaganda and entertainment. And most people just don't notice that it's gone from the football that they love to people offering political opinions. And so they become brainwashed over time. It's happened in my own family. You know, people who grew up as Democrats in the previous generation in my family, now it's all QVC, Fox, and Trump. And that's all I have to say. But
thank you.
Don't ignore the effect of business.
No, and I think, just relating to that, I think it's important that we all look for other places to get our information from. If you're just getting it off of one channel or social media, you're really not getting the full story. I mean, there are plenty of monthly publications that are really good. There's foreign publications that are pretty good. You know, you need to look at what's going on in the British press. And if you speak other languages, what's going on, I understand there's a real good, I don't have it at hand, but there's a real good German one. Thank you, yeah. So if you educate yourself, then there's more chance that you can help influence others too. So every one of us is an ambassador to help save the democracy of the United States. So you have a fellow up there. Two people, okay.
Oh, hi, Larry.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hey, thank you so much for being here. My question is directly in a great segue from the last gentleman. And at the beginning of your speech, you talked about appropriate information. And could you recommend today where we might obtain that information?
That's a big job. Do you have a suggestion up there?
I have two suggestions.
Okay.
Public radio, wait.
Yeah, go ahead. Now, I'll put my 2 cents in after. So.
Public radio, public television are two sources, and there is a historian author named Heather Cox Richardson, and who writes a daily account of what happens in Washington, and I highly recommend it.
And you have to find out what you feel is giving you a broad sense. Everything that's written has some bias. I mean, I'm biased, I mean, I admit. But you need to get a broad sense and make your own decision, because ultimately your decision is what's most important to you. So.
Hey Larry, I have a question for you about states that require that you mail back your ballot. It is so important because in Mexico, as you all know, we don't have much of a mail system. We don't really have a mail system that you can count on. And the number one reason that ballots are rejected, as Larry mentioned earlier, is because they didn't arrive in time. So you have to allow more time. So can you comment more on that?
Sure, and I don't have the exact number, maybe Emily knows, but I would have to guess there's probably 20 states maybe?
Yeah, 30.
30 states that require you to mail your ballot back in. That's part of the reason, being from New Hampshire, when I got my primary ballot, I sent it off immediately. Our primary's on the 23rd of this month. So it will make it fine, but if I just sat on it, it wouldn't. So people that are from mail-back states need to pay particular attention to when you get your ballot, vote it right away. And there's enough time with 45 days to use iShop or Handy Mail and get your ballot back for, $2, $3, whatever the charge is. You don't want to spend $50, $60. I mean, I would encourage you to do it if you have to, but you don't want to really have to do that because you don't have to. You can get it done expediently, and then you can walk around, know that you did the right thing. Oh, okay, first.
Yeah, thank you very much for all the information. As a Canadian, I don't have the right to vote in your election. But one of the things that I have noticed is that Americans that I've met here, and even at home when they're visiting Canada, is that you can't talk to one another when you're on the two sides of the political divide. And I find that very, very distressing. I know you were talking about informing yourself, but if you can somehow begin to talk to your neighbors that are on the other side of the political strife, it might begin to bridge the gap and share information.
Right. Thank you. That's a very, very good point.
Can I add something to that?
I'm going to let her do the...
Well, it's apropos what was just said.
Sir, we have the mic over here.
Yeah.
Please stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry, for all this information. I'm one of the volunteers who will be with Larry up here, but I don't know 1/15 of what Larry or Emily know. So a scenario that I hear about is, okay, if I request my ballot in January and I vote in my primary, and then I return for good to the United States, set up residency in a different state, and the general election comes, am I going to be able to do all of that? So basically vote in two different states, one in primary and one in...
I think the short answer is yes. You have to follow the deadlines of the given state. You'd have to notify the state that you're not voting in anymore, there, and if you've created residency, presumably in a new state, and you go to that election, your town or city election office and register there. But yeah, there's no reason. You can't vote twice for the same election, but you can change states.
Darn. I'm going to bring the mic up to the front.
Can I say my piece? Very short.
Stand up, please.
Frank Watson again. To respond to the comments made by Canadian lady, there is an excellent program on PBS, and the title is The Citizen's Guide to Democracy, and it lays out 10 tenets which would overcome the problem that she mentioned.
Thanks, Frank.
Good information. There are also different channels that you can tune into on YouTube. Independent media, independent news, unsolicited by the cables. Who is it?
There's one up front here.
Stevie.
Yep.
Stevie? Take your mic, please.
For those people who have to mail their ballots, I don't know exactly when, but pretty soon, we will have a box in the office in LCS. We will help you put your ballots into the right size envelopes and mail them. And you can just put them in the box at LCS. And the consulate from Guadalajara comes and picks them up and mails them for us.
That's a real good point.
They must have postage.
They have to have normal US postage on them, because the consulate will take them and put
One
them in
last
the US
question.
mail.
Anybody one last question? Right here.
Hi, this is not a question. For those of us who still read, instead of getting our news from various sources on the media, there's a book I think you should read, All Americans, to learn about the history of our country and why we have a fever in our nation today. And the name of the book is Fever in the Heartland, by a writer who's fabulous. It is an elucidating book about what's happening today. Fever in the Heartland. You can get it on your Kindle, or you could buy the book. It's worth reading to understand the relationship between the history of our country in the middle of the country and how it relates to today.
Thank you, everybody. This was wonderful. Thank you, Larry Pihl.
Thank you.
Everybody get registered. Thank you for coming out today. Don't forget, next week, David Ellison will enjoy